My friend's bike is falling apart. It's made by coco-mat bikes. This was apparently a very early production model in the first 300. From what I've been told, they fixed the issues with their production methods soon after this was produced. As you can see, it's missing the rear mudguard. We'll have to make a new one. The handlebars are loose. The top tube is cracked down the center. And the seat and chainstays are separating on both sides. We're going to need to plate this with steel. All the plates are cut out using a jigsaw and cleaned up on the bench grinder. The plates are sanded so they look pretty, and I laid out and cut out all the remaining pieces. The chainstay, seat stay connecting plates have extra plates on the inside to spread the load from the nuts and reinforce the crack from both sides. The bike is then disassembled and sanded. My original plan was to plate the broken side of the handlebars, but then I decided to glue it instead. I use a piece of thread to floss the glue deep into the crack, and then I can clamp it and leave it to dry. And now it's just a lot of marking holes and drilling them in the plates in the bike. The wood is treated with 2 coats of Liberon polyurethane lacquer thinned with white spirit. Now I know what you're thinking. It was probably something stupid like this that caused him to break his finger. Well, you're wrong. It's so much more embarrassing. I put on a pair of boots a bit too fast and bent it sideways. Now I need to work on the rear mudguard. To make that mudguard, I need to bend it with steam. And to bend it with steam, I need a steam bender. The copper pipe will get attached to the kettle. The kettle will sit on the portable gas stove, and the steam will go into that big metal pipe with some plywood end caps. One side is screwed in directly, and there's a hole drilled out the center. The door end gets 3 stops screwed in place and has a steam vent drilled in and a handle attached to the door. The spout is cut, then the copper pipe is trimmed and shaped. My solder joint is terrible, so I use plumber's epoxy instead. It can deal with temperatures well in excess of 100 degrees Celsius, therefore, so long as I don't let it boil dry, it will be fine. I'm heat bending the pipe so it can go horizontally into the steam chamber. I got it a little too hot, and so now it's burning my glove. Just as I was starting to run some test bends with strips of plywood around a spare rim, my friend ended up finding the missing mudguard, so I'll use this instead, and stick a plate on it like I've done with everything else. Here are all the plates, screws, nuts and washers I'll be using. I can hear you saying, how is he going to treat the plates? They're just mild steel, they'll rust. Paint won't work with the overall design of the bike, and a clear coat won't adhere well to bare steel. The answer is electroplating. Electroplating with nickel. The first step involves this dental welding machine. I believe it was used by dentists to weld people's teeth back into their heads. Essentially, it's a spot welder that uses a rotary phone dial to create the pulses for spot welding. One spot is definitely enough to hold these two strips together. If we intentionally create a poor contact area, there's ever so slightly more of a violent reaction. After making several of these hand-shaped electrodes, the creation of the solution can begin. A 7% solution of vinegar with some table salt is used. Over time, the anode is consumed and must be replaced. The solution becomes greener and greener, until it can be poured out and strained of any metallic nickel particulates that have been shed into the solution. The plates are sanded once again and cleaned with brake clean to remove any oils and provide a clean surface for plating. The nickel acetate solution is now ready for use in plating. The steel plates act as the cathode and the nickel electrodes the anode. I started with the fan-shaped electrodes, moving them around the perimeter of the plate, but this caused a very uneven coating to form. I then created these larger electrodes that are suspended above the plates and result in much more consistent plating thickness. The bike is now ready for reassembly. As mentioned earlier, these narrow plates will hopefully spread the load from the exterior plates and stop them bending over time. The bike looks good and rides well, so I think this was a success.